I'm Maria Dalton, approaching my 27th birthday, and I've been happily married for 5 years. My adorable son, Martin, turned 4 this year. Initially, I worked full-time after tying the knot, but now I balance my professional life with part-time work at the same company. My husband, 3 years my senior at 30, is Kevin Carlton. We first crossed paths through his ardent advances, which eventually led us to date and subsequently to marriage. However, the Kevin I knew during our courtship transformed after we exchanged vows, revealing a more domineering side. Kevin has a younger sister, Jane Dalton, age 20, whom he spoils, likely due to the significant age gap. Before marriage, I didn't pay much heed to their dynamic, thinking they got along well. Yet post-wedding, I've observed a shift in Jane's behavior. Jane frequently visits our home unannounced, disregarding the time, morning or night. Despite my presence, she behaves as if I'm invisible, directing her attention solely to Kevin, announcing her arrival with a casual brother, "I'm here again." Kevin, seeing a dinner prepared for 3, invites Jane to join without hesitation. I've noticed a pattern where Jane never brings any gifts or expressions of gratitude during her visits. When I discreetly inform Kevin that dinner wasn't prepared for an extra guest, he brushes it off, telling me to handle it since his sister is visiting. Consequently, I find myself serving my portion of dinner to Jane. In a tone audible enough for Jane to hear, Kevin places the blame on me, asserting that I should have been considerate and prepared extra food. Jane, upon hearing Kevin's words, appears on the verge of tears and apologizes to me. Kevin, quick to comfort his sister, chastises me, accusing me of being inconsiderate or mean to Jane. Although Jane verbally apologizes each time, her reassurance from Kevin's preferential treatment seems to bring her joy. Left with only leftovers from the fridge, I prepare my own meal. Just as I'm about to join Kevin and Martin at the table, Jane interrupts, expressing a desire to discuss something privately with Kevin. Kevin instructs Martin and me to leave the table, insisting that Martin eats with me. This scenario is not unfamiliar. Kevin has separated us like this before. After Martin and I finish our meal and head to another room for cleanup, I discover Kevin and Jane engrossed in a cheerful conversation on the sofa. The dishes from their meal are left untouched on the dining table, and there's no attempt to clean up. It starts to dawn on me that they may view me not as a wife and sister-in-law, but as an outsider in their private discussions and moments. It became increasingly evident that I was perceived less as a wife and sister-in-law and more like a maid. Even my son, Martin, received no attention. It felt as though a maid had brought her child to work. After cleaning up in the kitchen and preparing to take a bath with Martin, Kevin called out loudly, disrupting our evening routine. Despite the late hour, around 8 p.m., Kevin insisted that Jane wanted a cake and instructed me to buy it immediately from a specific shop near the station. As I hesitated, Jane asserted her desire, and Kevin hurried me, downplaying the importance of Martin's bedtime. Faced with their insistence, I reluctantly agreed to go. The cake shop near the station closed at 9 p.m., so there was a narrow window for me to make the purchase. Overhearing their conversation as I got ready, they spoke loudly enough for me to catch snippets of blame and questioning my suitability for marriage. Despite my reservations, I couldn't leave Martin behind, so I decided to take him with me. While preparing Martin, Kevin's loud voice reached my ears from the living room, threatening divorce if I defied him again. Martin, too young to understand the words, could sense the tension between his parents. Suppressing my emotions, I asked Martin about his cake preference. He brightened up, saying, "Mom, I want a cake with lots of fruits." Our journey to the cake shop became a momentary escape from Kevin's words as we discussed cakes. Just before closing time, Martin and I reached the cake shop. Fortunately, the cake Jane wanted was available, and we also bought a fruit-loaded cake as per Martin's choice. Upon returning home, I served the cakes to Jane and Kevin, attempting to maintain a semblance of normalcy amidst the strained atmosphere. With a heavy heart, I proceeded to prepare Martin's cake and headed to the dining room. Placing the cake in front of him, A moment later, Jane pointed at it and declared that she wanted that cake instead. Before I could respond, Kevin swiftly moved the chosen cake in front of Jane, disregarding Martin's protests, and she began eating it. Kevin justified his actions by asserting that he bought the cake with his earned money, emphasizing his right to decide for Martin. Unable to contain my emotions any longer, I voiced my dissatisfaction, only to be met with Kevin's threat of divorce. Martin, now holding my hand tightly and looking anxious, stopped crying and after some thought said, "Mom, I also love cake with strawberries on it. Yes, it's really delicious." He mentioned it while eating a cake that Jane initially wanted. Feeling that I'm subjecting Martin to undue stress, I realized there are 3 adults, including myself, making a 4-year-old child endure this situation. Lifting Martin's cake plate when I saw Jane reaching for it, I took him to the next room so he could enjoy his cake slowly. Perhaps noticing Jane's actions, Kevin apologized to her, claiming he was being stingy. Resisting the urge to retort, I chose not to expose Martin to the word divorce. Watching Martin innocently eat his cake with cream around his mouth proved to be a heartwarming sight. After finishing the cake, ignoring both Kevin and Jane, we decided to have a late bath and sleep in Martin's bed. The next morning, I woke up to find that Jane had already left. As I prepared breakfast and was about to wake up Kevin and Martin, I heard Martin crying. Shockingly, the piggy bank given to him by my father was broken, and the money he had saved up was gone. Every night, it was a ritual for Martin to bid goodnight to his piggy bank before sleeping, and last night was no exception. He said his goodnight and went to sleep with me. At that time, the only people in the living room were Kevin and Jane. Concerned, I approached Kevin about the piggy bank, and Jane casually admitted to taking money from it, claiming she needed it. Kevin responded indifferently, stating that she took it for a reason. Martin, still crying and shaking, held in my arms. I could feel this hurt so profoundly that I cried with him. Witnessing Kevin prioritize and care for his sister, Jane, more than our own son, Martin, brought about a surge of anger and sadness simultaneously. In the morning, the atmosphere was heavy, and Kevin, breaking the silence, exclaimed, "Why are you making the atmosphere so bad? I feel terrible." Unable to contain my anger and frustration, I expressed my emotions towards him. Martin, crying so intensely for the first time since our marriage, was a breaking point for me. I had always been careful not to argue in front of Martin, but seeing him so hurt compelled me to speak up. Kevin, looking at me intensely, went to the bedroom without saying a word and returned with something in his hand. Shockingly, it was divorce papers, something I didn't even know he had hidden somewhere. "If you're not happy with me, then let's divorce," he said, shoving the papers at me before leaving the house with a loud bang. It seemed Martin, who had never cried over the issues with Kevin and Jane before, must have reached his emotional limit. Seeing Martin cry since last night was heartbreaking. Unable to bear seeing him so hurt, I suggested to him, "Hey Martin, should we skip daycare today?" He responded with an enthusiastic yes, showing a faint smile. Bringing a picture book from the shelf, he sat on my lap, looked up at me happily, and said, "The teacher at the nursery today was Mama, right?" He looked like an angel, and I couldn't help but think that his little heart must be full of patience. Today, I decided that we would play as much as we could to fill his heart. Though I might be causing trouble at my workplace, when I explained the situation, they kindly suggested I take a day off to spend time with Martin. In the morning, we went to the park, played hide and seek, and had a lot of fun in the sandbox and on the slide. When we got home for lunch, Martin seemed to be getting sleepy. While he usually naps by himself, today he fell asleep on my lap, reminiscent of his baby days. Though I initially thought of doing household chores during his nap, I decided that today was special. I opted to be healed by his sleeping face and gentle breathing. As I dozed off, I was startled by a noise from the entrance. It sounded like the front door had opened, but it wasn't time for Kevin to come home yet, making me suspicious. Quickly grabbing Martin and taking only my bag with valuables, I hid in the bedroom closet, holding my breath. I heard a voice, one I had heard somewhere before. The person seemed to be searching the house for something, and the situation left me on edge. In the midst of fear and trembling due to the noise of rummaging, I soon recognized the voice. It was Jane's. Many questions surfaced, such as why she had a key and what she was searching for. Carefully opening the closet, I observed Jane roughly going through drawers and doors. After a big sigh, she made a phone call, expressing her frustration at not finding what she was looking for. Listening closely, she mentioned searching and checking various places. The conversation included references to Kevin and a sense of urgency. After ending the call with a clear, "I'm going home now, Kevin," I was left pondering what they were looking for. The sound of the front door locking echoed, prompting me to emerge from the closet. Putting Martin to bed, I contemplated the recent events. It became evident that Kevin knew about whatever belongings they were searching for. If it wasn't a known item's location, could it be one of my belongings? Despite the earlier conversation, I couldn't deduce why Jane had entered the house. Suddenly, Kevin seemed like a stranger, and I was overcome with a mix of disgust and fear towards him. Swiftly packing the essentials for Martin and me, I was ready to leave by the time Martin woke up from his nap. "Martin, let's go to Grandpa's place now," I said, and we headed to the station, taking a train to my parents' house. Fortunately, their home was nearby, just 2 stations away, so we'd arrived quickly. Without prior notice, my parents were surprised but sensed something from my expression. Without asking questions, they welcomed us in. Their pet dog, a favorite of Martin's, immediately joined in the play. Witnessing this, I felt a sense of relief and proceeded to share everything that had happened with Kevin and Jane. Expressing my fear of staying at our house, my mother suggested that if Jane was looking for my belongings, it might be my cash cards. My mother's words resonated with me, and I recounted my experience of successfully launching an online shop for handmade goods with friends before marriage. As the CEO in the handmade industry, the shop gained recognition, and as it grew significantly, I made the decision to get married. I had chosen to prioritize raising my child, entrusting the company I co-founded to my reliable friends until my child-rearing responsibilities settled down. Although I still held the position of CEO, Kevin was unaware of it. He knew about my past role as a CEO, when I was single and likely suspected that I had savings. Despite this, I hadn't disclosed the details of my ongoing CEO status and savings to him. Kevin's financial habits became apparent early in our marriage. He was spendthrift, and he initially allocated only $200 per month for our food expenses. He even suggested that I quit my part-time job and become a full-time housewife, a proposition I firmly declined. Eventually, he reluctantly agreed to let me work part-time at my current job. To secure our marriage, he had me sign a post-marital property waiver, assuring that I wouldn't contemplate divorce. Since Martin's birth, I've received only $200 for food expenses, necessitating the use of my savings for Martin's nursery fees and clothes. I never asked Kevin for more money beyond the food budget, leading him to believe I had substantial savings. With Jane in apparent need of money, Kevin might have been looking for my cash cards. However, they would not find them, as I always carried my valuables. Realizing the unresolved issue and potential unauthorized access to our house, I decided to store my valuables, including cash cards, at my parents' house. As I pondered the motive behind their actions, Martin approached my father crying, explaining that his piggy bank was broken, and he couldn't keep his promise to save up. My father, visibly angered, suggested calling Kevin to discuss the matter. My mother advised a more cautious approach, considering Kevin's talk of divorce and the potential blame he might shift. She recommended calmly finding out their purpose before they could escape with a suitable excuse. With this in mind, I decided to record their conversation to understand their motives. My parents, having a friend who was a lawyer, suggested consulting him. As I cooked dinner at home, Kevin arrived. I discreetly started recording on my phone with the screen facing down to avoid detection. Surprisingly, He immediately inquired about the location of my cash cards. When questioned, he gave evasive answers, and when I remained silent, he eventually pleaded, "Give me all your part-time money for my sister." In response to Kevin's demand for all my part-time earnings, I firmly stated that the money was for Martin's savings. Kevin's anger escalated, and he pushed the signed divorce papers toward me, accusing me of living off his money. He dismissed the importance of saving for Martin and emphasized his preference for Jane over our son. Upon hearing these words, I silently ceased preparing the meal, placed the divorce papers in the bag I had packed, took Martin's hand, and headed to the door. In a loud voice, Kevin declared that he was serious about the divorce and insisted that I should never come back. In defiance, I asserted that I would not return to a house where a stranger could freely enter. The term stranger referred to Jane, whom Kevin seemed to prioritize over our family. After leaving the house, I received numerous messages and calls from Kevin, which I chose to ignore. I turned off my phone and sought refuge at my parents' house. Upon reaching my parents, I shared the recorded conversation and the completed divorce papers with them. Though I admitted to having no love or affection for Kevin, I expressed concern for Martin. Despite their suggestion to divorce in order not to hurt Martin's feelings, there was also a possibility that divorce could adversely affect him. Struggling with this decision, Martin, feeling hungry, prompted my mother to make his favorite dish, hamburgers. Overwhelmed with emotion, I couldn't hold back my tears as my mother assured Martin that they were prepared for him and me whenever we wanted to visit. Touched by Martin's kindness, I was encouraged to eat the hamburger with him, sharing a moment filled with love. Witnessing this heartfelt scene, my father assured Martin that my tears were happy tears, not sad ones. Moved by Martin's innocence and love, I realized the joy of being with family. My father gently asked Martin if he wanted to live with them as a family, and Martin happily agreed, bringing smiles to everyone. While contemplating divorce, this natural and joyous family meal made the decision clear. Although heavy-hearted, I decided to part ways with Kevin and inform Martin about it. Despite the initial struggles, the atmosphere was happy and everyone smiled, creating an environment filled with laughter and conversation. As I began preparations for the divorce, I contacted a lawyer who was a friend of my father. Martin slept peacefully with my father and the dog, providing a comforting backdrop of faint laughter. The next day, I met with the lawyer, and we successfully formalized the divorce contract. The lawyer explained that Jane had accumulated significant debt due to a casino and shopping addiction, with Kevin acting as her guarantor. The plan involved using my savings to repay the debt. Kevin's motive was to financially bind me, preventing thoughts of divorce. The divorce papers I submitted were already accepted, providing a sense of relief. Later, Kevin called, expressing emotional instability. While discussing the divorce, he admitted to spoiling Jane out of a misguided sense of sibling love. He expressed jealousy over losing me to Martin, but requested that I not remarry until he settled Jane's debts. However, I firmly conveyed that I no longer loved him and wouldn't reconsider. Kevin's somber tone ended the call with a plea for my happiness. With the divorce finalized, I discussed my future life with my parents, deciding to stay at their house until Martin grew up. I resumed my role as a company president and heard that Kevin and Jane were disowned by their parents due to their actions. Today, I find happiness in being with my family, grateful for the support and love that surrounds us,